In the last video, we looked at grid lines and how they are numbered. Grid also gives us the ability to name these grid lines to something more appropriate. You will often come across names such as row start or row end. Another useful way is to name them relating to the section of our page, such as a header, footer, sidebar, and so on. We're now going to return back to adding properties to the container. So we can return item 1 to just being item. So let's remove the 1 off the end of here. And now if we scroll back up to our container CSS, we can go ahead and add our columns. So let's remove this repeat from here. And all we need to do is add a name inside the square brackets for each column, followed by the size of the track. So if we open up and close the square brackets, we can set our first one to be called first, and then the size of 1FR. We can then repeat this with the square brackets again and call this second, and this can be 2FR. If we want a third column, exactly the same, name is third, and then 1FR, and then at the very end we can name this last and set this to be 2FR. And remember, these names inside the square brackets are totally up to you. Okay, so let's see how this looks. And let's see our 4 columns in action. Good, so there's our 4 columns with 1FR, 2, 1, and then 2. So also, rather than using individual names like we've just done, we can repeat the same name for each track, such as call start, and then call end, call start 2, call end 2, start 3, end 3, start 4, and then end 4. To achieve this, all we need to do is to add call start and also call end, and then these numbers will be added automatically after each one to distinguish between each column. And we can also do exactly the same for rows too. We can achieve this by going back over to the project and using repeat. Okay, so to begin to add this call start and call end to each column, we can go ahead and use the repeat method from before and delete our 4 individual names. Then go ahead and add repeat. Inside the brackets, I'm going to add 4 columns. So add 4 separated by the comma. Then we can go ahead and add our square brackets. The first value I'm going to set as call start. And this is the name for the start of each individual column. So it'll be call start, then call start 2, call start 3, and so on. Then the size that we want each column to be, I'm going to set mine to be 1FR. Then a second set of square brackets to add the name for the end of each column. So in our case, I'm going to use call end, and then save that. And also do the same for the rows below. We can keep 3 rows, that is fine. We can add a name of row start, a size of 1FR, and then our ending name of row end. Give that a save, and then refresh. And then we're back to a standard 4x3 grid layout. Now we can go ahead and add our item 1 class back in place, and we can move the item to where we want using these grid names. So the first one, let's add a class of item 1, so we can see the blue item again. Okay, so to make things more clear, I'm going to comment out the grid area that we used here for item 1, and then go back to using these 4 individual values, so it's a little bit easier to work with. Currently we have the row to be starting at 2 and 4, and let's just leave that for now. Instead, for the columns, let's go for call start, and then end position to be call end. Remember, these are the names which were set above inside these square brackets. Reload the browser. Okay, so as expected, we have the row start at position 2, so that's 1 and then 2, and then it ends at position 4, which we set with these 2 values here. We then set the columns to be the column start and column end. So remember that call start and call end is the starting and ending position of our first column. This is why it's only taken up 1 section here. If we wanted this to span 2 columns, such as over to this one here, we could then change this to be col end 2. So now this starts at the beginning of the first column and ends at the end of column 2. Now onto the rows. If we set the first value to be row start, and then the second one to be row end 4. Over to the browser. Now this begins at row start, which is the first row here, and then ends at row end 4, which is the fourth one here. So we are doing nothing different here than we've already learned. The only difference is we are referencing these grid lines by a name rather than a number. Next we're going to look at how we can use grid template areas to lay out a full website.